Hi, welcome back to CoRe Reads. We are back joining you, Amanda and Darcy, from the traditional lands of the Tsawwassen First Nation, and we are looking at part 4 of the Peacemaker's Code by Deepak Malhotra.
Right. And so this is the ambassador, and so we're now starting to see real negotiations with the other side, not just internally. And I'm really enjoying this.
I think we're starting to get to some really rich stuff. And so, Amanda, I want to start with something that we have only kind of touched on the last little bit. But early on, we were both expressing some skepticism. We were going, well, we're glad it's not time travel. What could it be? And we had our guesses, and I don't think we had shared all of them on camera. But this part, we finally get an answer, and it's not what I expected.
Well, I'm just really happy that it's not some hokey quantum worlds thing, which was really my concern. And we're not going to spoil it, but I quite love it, right? And just this space of dealing with how do we have these things going on and what's happening. And part of what's happening a little bit is what is the grand ruse, right? When we're expecting certain things, what will we just ignore or just assume is fine? And so that kind of when you're set up, what will you not notice? Because you just assume everything is the way it's supposed to be. And I kind of love that.
I think that's really, that's really interesting. And the other piece that I think is interesting is the things that do flag as surprises. The main character realizes a little bit what's going on because there are those moments and little things that stand out as unusual. So most things you can gloss over, but there's that little gut feeling or that emotional moment of, I don't know why this word makes me feel that way, or this visual makes me feel this way. And that is an interesting hint that we actually got early on in earlier parts that is explored here more and a little more clear.
Yeah, that turn of phrase, that we have time. We have time, it's a hook. So watch for it, watch it as it comes through. Yeah. And that sort of space of here's a thing that has a deeper level of meaning, right? It's funny because in a couple of the interactions, it reminds me of reading books in translation. Right?
Oh yeah.
Where there is a meaning here, and I have missed the point. And the point I know from the reactions of all of the kids was good. Right? Yeah. Here's a good, I've missed something of substance, and the character's having that same reaction. I have missed something of substance. I'm having a feeling, but it's not quite the feeling I should have.
Yeah.
Right, and I don't know what's wrong. Right? There's a thing in the air, and I'm just not quite able to tell what it is. And he actually talks through a little bit. Yeah. I know I'm missing something. What is the thing that's missing? And that following of the threads and the feelings are the opening to what's the thread I've missed.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is a valuable thing to be looking at is, you can do your analysis of the logic and the space around you, and then what else is your body telling you?
And I'm enjoying here as we're moving back and forth in time, just the two different spaces of, we're dealing with two very different places and two very different versions of the main character in these two times because of what's happened in the middle, and we're missing the information about what's happened in the middle. And so we have as much mystery going on as some of the characters about what's happened in that middle, and just seeing the one our main character in one space being very confident and very self-assured and knowing that he knows what he's doing, right, having real concerns and fears and emotions, but being very confident, and in the other space just being deeply unmoored, right? So we're seeing what happens to somebody it really feels with no confidence, the same skills, the same capabilities, but no confidence.
Yeah. And
it's just really interesting to see, that dichotomy in how, his tone's different, the way he speaks is different, the kinds of questions he asks, his insights are very different. The sort of willingness to share or to be sure of his opinion really shifts, and we're seeing it kind of in those kind of future-oriented pieces.
Yeah.
And I'm super curious how that will carry us through a little bit more as we go deeper in.
Yeah, yeah. And there is something that you mentioned, and we're talking around some spoiler here. So, one of the things that happens is that in this is one of those early stages of communication with the other side, negotiation starting. And you picked up on just how much the centering that we get, the whole process of centering oneself, getting ready to get into the discussion, and we get the moment where it immediately goes off the rails.
No, I love both of those, right?
It's good stuff.
Like it's interesting, this and the centering the self is before the negotiations start. It's much more when they've demanded he goes with them, right? It's kind of like, you will become our hostage, you will come in person, that sort of fear. And those spaces of working through when I feel this kind of emotion, here's my plan. When I feel this kind of emotion, here's my plan. When I feel, and we watch him work through planning of how he will behave when he is terrified, when he is angry, and expecting them to push his buttons, right? He expects to be angry. He expects to be afraid. He expects to, and so then what happens when he is hungry, when he is thirsty, and he plans each of those out, and we see that removing of the distractions.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, what happens to me if, and that like orientation to the space, right? I will sit in the chair so I know what it feels like, so I'm not thinking about the chair. I will, my water will be here. And so he tries to very carefully craft all of the pieces of what that interaction is going to do and be like and how it will go. And then it doesn't go like that, right? And so watching someone who has crafted that very carefully and then the having to let go. And I'm really, as somebody that does that, right, on a regular basis, right? Like that is really what every conversation with every human is kind of like a little bit. Yeah. But especially in like mediations and negotiations, you do a lot of crafting and then you do a lot of letting go the moment other people show up. Yeah. Right? We lay out water glasses, we get pens ready, we think about lighting, we think about airflow, we think about food and chairs and setting very deeply. How do you greet people? How do you sit? And like the moment you interact with them, it's gone.
Yeah.
And they don't come in the way you hoped they would, and then you just have to roll forward. But there's something in that preparation that allows you to then be flexible. And I think that's part of what we see is being so well prepared that when the script is burned,
yes,
like you can still make decisions from before you were emotional.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's something to be said for preparing to have all the, worst case scenarios. And then those like middle ground scenarios don't feel as scary. So there is kind of a moment of, okay, I really didn't expect that. But it's not the singular worst thing that could have happened. So, okay, recenter. I prepared for the worst. This isn't even that. We're good.
It's where emergency planning is so valuable. Like in that space. And we see it a little bit, like walking through very carefully what I will. Yeah. I loved that.
I really enjoyed it. I think we're picking up into some of the stuff that I'm most excited about. I hope I'm right. I'm excited to see where we go from here.
Yeah, and I think we're probably running long, so we'll do one more interesting piece.
Yes.
And maybe you can pick another one if I'm not picking the one that you want. But this place of where someone makes a decision to go against the authority of their side and what had been agreed to.
Yeah.
And so this space of making the other decision and what that actually looks like.
And that's, I think it's important. I don't remember now if we talked about it a lot in depth earlier, but this is something that we picked up through the book. There's been kind of a lot of, well, that guy might have made a slightly different choice, and this person, they didn't quite follow the orders exactly, and the frustration and understanding, and now we're at the place of, and maybe I don't follow that order perfectly either.
And it's funny because I, reading that piece, remember an earlier discussion with the president in which a very specific deal had been made,
Yeah.
and then that deal is not held.
Yep.
And I'm almost curious, because the president is very shrewd, if the president did it on purpose to push him to do this thing, that it looks like a direct disobeying of orders.
Interesting.
And so that was and I'm just very curious if that was the opening that was there, that she couldn't make that order.
Yeah.
She couldn't ask him to do this thing. It's obviously the thing that needs to be done,
Yeah.
right? She breaks too much trust with her people if she asks it to happen.
Yeah.
And therefore she gives him the space in which he has the opportunity to do it without really disobeying her, because she had made a deal with him where he would get to have a conversation with her that she doesn't let happen.
Yeah.
And so there's that kind of funny thing that happens in places of power sometimes, where by saying nothing, you say something.
Yeah. Which is something that did come up earlier. So we have the groundwork to believe that a no contact might be a yes. Anyways, I think that's as far as we can go, because you're right. We're running a little long.
Next week, we'll be reading The Negotiator, which is really exciting because they're actually gonna meet, I think.
They
We will
better.
see.
It'll be way weirder if they don't.
So join us next week, and if you can, on Zoom on September 13th.
All right. We'll see you there.